ESG Conversation Show. Many companies and industries are beginning to adopt net zero and sustainability ambitions into their visions for the future. A handful are already seeking solutions to realize sustainable futures sooner rather than later, but fewer are seeing this as a shared responsibility, pooling their resources. On the show today, we want to take a different slant and view the ESG conversation through the tech ecosystem lens. And to do that, we have Matt van Leeuwen. He's the Chief Innovation Officer of Sunway Group and the founding director of Sunway iLabs. Alongside Miles Kirby, he's the CEO of Deeptech Labs out of the UK. They're also here to talk about their recent partnership and how their common goals align and complement each other. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Hi, Brian.
Now, for a start, then perhaps we start with Matt. Matt, could you detail Sunway Group's net zero ambitions and efforts?
Yeah, sure. I think before we talk about net zero ambitions, I think we should probably talk a little bit more about, the vision of the company around sustainability. And I'm always a big fan to understand visions of companies, understand their why, and really what's the deeper purpose for existence of a business. Because having a strong vision, I believe, is really important. Whether it is to change the status quo or to disrupt an industry, or simply to innovate to stay ahead of competitors. And for sustainability, the same thing applies, to have a clear vision. And visions can mean different things and come in different forms or shapes. And I think it's important sometimes to understand where that vision came from in the first place, because it oftentimes forms, the narrative for a business, and in fact can become the very DNA of a company. And so where did Sunway's vision for sustainability come from? And people often ask this question, and the best way to answer that is actually to invite you to come to Sunway City and walk around the township. And I'm glad that Miles came over earlier this year for a few days to really see for himself what we have to offer. And unfortunately, we can't do that right now. The best thing I can do is to give you my virtual background. But if you would sit from my office right now, and I'm looking at the view on Sunway, the first thing you will notice is that there's a unique landscape that combines urban buildings with lots of greeneries. There's Sunway Pyramids, one of the largest shopping malls in Malaysia. There's Sunway Medical Center, where we provide world-class facilities and service and care for our patients. We have a Sunway University here on the edge as well, and a college where more than 20,000 students come to study and learn every day. And then we have a fantastic resort with 2 more hotels that provides a wonderful experience to guests here. But when you look closer in the center of the township, you see a deep hole with more trees growing at lower levels. You'll see a lake. You'll see lots of people enjoying themselves at our Sunway Lagoon theme park with many attractions. And when you look at Sunway today, right, as I'm looking at it right now, it's really hard to imagine that 40 years ago, this was an old mining area. It was an abandoned tin mine that our founder and our chairman, Tan Sri Jeffrey Cha, bought with a vision to turn this into what we now call a 50-minute city. And we call it a 50-minute city because the people who live here have all their basic needs, like healthcare, education, or your basic amenities accessible to you within a 50 minutes walk. And I say a walk because the city is connected through canopy walks, so you don't need to get a car around. And I can testify this myself now, and I just recently moved into Sunway, and I can say it's such a privilege not having to drive to work or get to your shopping mall to get your shopping done. So at the core, to answer your question, Brian, so at the core of Sunway's mission is the vision of its founder and our chairman, who basically witnessed firsthand by growing up in a former tin mining town called Pusing in Perak, on what it is, or what environmental degradation can do, and what ugly scars it can leave behind. And this experience from him growing up in that sort of mining area shaped his vision to weave sustainability into the very DNA of Sunway and to serve communities and, of course, our nation. And now, as a company which has fully embraced the 17 Sustainable Development Goals that were set by the United Nations, we have integrated these goals also in our business strategy and in our decision-making process. And then in 2021, as part of our commitment to drive ESG in the country, we pledged to achieve net zero carbon emissions by 2050, which is not an easy goal, but that's what we are here to talk about as well.
Now, one of the reasons, and just to add to what Matt has said, Sunway and Matt were invited here very deliberately to be on the ESG show, because literally whatever Matt has described is the truth. I've been there. I live not very far away from Sunway, and it's amazing the transformation just that I've seen in the last 25 years. And I think Sunway talked about sustainability before it became a word that was in vogue. So really kudos to Sunway and Tan Sri Jeffrey Chia really for having that vision to execute really from this open cast tin mine into what it is today. But now I want to move over to Miles. Miles, Deeptech Labs, tell us about it and really give us an idea of some of the amazing things that you've done in the past and how this now relates to sustainability.
Certainly. Thanks very much for having me on the show today. So yes, from the Deeptech Labs side, let me tell you a little bit about sort of our focus and what we're working on, and I can share certainly a little bit of my background as well. But at Deeptech Labs, our focus is very much on helping to take new technologies and develop them into real businesses. So one of the big challenges that we see is great research and great new ideas coming out, but what we see is a very high failure rate, and part of that is because great researchers and great sort of engineering ideas that have come through and businesses formed, often the entrepreneurs don't necessarily have the experience and the network to be able to build successful businesses. So our whole focus is helping those people to be able to move from an idea and some technology into a real business. And that's where our partnership with Sunway is really important to us, because in engaging our companies with folks like Sunway to be able to help them to go to market, to help them expand into Southeast Asia is a critical part of that. So we're set up with the University of Cambridge and with ARM, as well as 2 venture capital funds here in town and our chairman, Leeuwen Kirk. And the whole focus has been around taking those technologies and turning them into real businesses. Now, we've got a number of sustainable and sustainability businesses, going from batteries to new processors using light instead of electrical signals to drive a 10x reduction in power consumption in data centers, next generation batteries with much lower carbon footprint. So we've got a number of really exciting businesses in this space, and our partnership with Sunway helps to be able to expand that, as I said, into Southeast Asia. We have companies from all across Europe, from the top universities here within Europe. And so part of what we do is to bring the last generation of entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs who have built really interesting, exciting, world-changing companies, to work with this next generation of entrepreneurs. So we have folks from founders of ARM, founder of Cambridge Silicon Radio, ex-COO of Microsoft, these kinds of folks who work with our companies and help them figure out how do I build this really sustainable ongoing business? And as far as sort of my background, I mean, I've been in this space for sort of over 20 years. I spent 20 years in California with Qualcomm. I ran the venture capital group. I also set up an incubator there, looking at what new businesses Qualcomm could build. Did a number of different things, but one of those areas we looked at was wireless charging for electric cars. And so I've got sort of over sort of 20 patents around a number of different areas, including that. And so in my background, I invested in Formula E for Qualcomm, was on the board there, which is a sustainable all-electric race series to sort of show that electric vehicles can be exciting, can be fun. And also this wireless charging that I developed. We have them use that on the safety car and the medical car. I invested in A123 Systems, which is one of the largest battery companies spinning out of MIT. And so my background has always been in the deep tech side, which I get really excited about. And sustainability is something which is, you know, such a massive sort of challenge for society today. And so it's our belief at Deeptech Labs that, you know, we are going to solve these solutions through innovation, and we need to be able to help these great new technology ideas to be developed not just in the lab as an idea for a prototype for a demo, but to actually build those into real businesses so we can have a large societal impact.
Now, gentlemen, I understand that you all announced this partnership around London Tech Week. How long did it take this partnership to gel together, and how did it happen?
Okay, maybe I can start on that, Miles, and you can add on.
Certainly.
I would say it's gone pretty fast. So from Sunway, we have an ongoing relationship and partnership with Cambridge University through Sunway University. And we regularly have visitors and speakers from Cambridge coming to Sunway to give talks. And it was on one of those dinners when one of their pro vice chancellors mentioned or was talking about innovation, and he mentioned about the Cambridge cluster, the different venture capital funds, and then he mentioned Deeptech Labs as one of the drivers to take innovations from the university through a Cambridge enterprise as well, and commercialize these and bring them to the market. And then so a really interesting conversation with him about it over dinner. And I said, well, that sounds really cool. I'm going to visit Cambridge in December together with my colleague, and maybe we can visit some of your friends and partners there. And that's how I got to meet Miles in December on, I think it was the coldest day of the year. There's literally like no way to get around, as public transport didn't work. And so luckily we had a car to take us there, but it was on that winter day when we started talking about the synergies that we have. Sunway iLabs also being an accelerator program, having had a lot of experience in investing in startups, mentoring them and introducing them to a wider ecosystem. And I think we just got along really well, where I think a lot of the things what Miles was saying about what they're doing in Deeptech Labs really resonated with us. And we felt at the time that, you know, most of the innovations that we are currently looking into when we talk about net zero cannot be found just in Malaysia or even the Southeast Asian region. And so we need to do more cross-border work and work with people like Miles who have their own portfolio of companies and try to see which technologies we can take to Malaysia, incubate here, and maybe localize them to have a bigger impact on our regional ecosystem. And that's, I think, the last 6 months or so has accelerated, and so much so that we decided to form this partnership with Deeptech Labs, which we just announced a few weeks ago at London Tech Week. That's my version of it. I'm interested.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let me tell you something from our side. So as Matt said, we got to meet on one of the coldest days of the year in Cambridge. Matt and team came to visit us at Deeptech Labs here in Cambridge, and we started to talk about what we were doing and so the different companies. And really, it was around for us. It was finding a partner that had a similar vision So, was very focused on sort of, how do you help early stage companies? For us, what was really interesting was, Sunway and iLabs was their sort of connectivity within Southeast Asia, which, we've been sort of started obviously in Cambridge, working all across Europe, but hadn't really sort of, had a lot of relationships in Southeast Asia. And so for us, it was really interesting to have sort of a partner who was focused in a very similar area, and that, with Matt and so the projects that he's running at Sunway, it felt like there was a lot of synergies. And as we talked through what we were doing, we talked around, finding really interesting sort of top tier deep tech companies in Europe and helping them move to Asia and to help to sort of build out the Sunway vision. It just felt like we had a really, really good synergies there. We've had 24 companies coming through the program. We talked through the different companies. Sunway's already talking to a number of those different companies around how they can work together. Could there be a base in Southeast Asia for those companies? So it just, as we started to talk, we said, look, this sounds really interesting. I did a trip over to Sunway, got to see everything that was going on there, got to talk at the university, got to see sort of a number of the startups there, got to meet the executives, and it just felt like there were really strong synergies. So I think sort of working through that, we built this relationship, and I think it's very synergistic, and so we're very excited to work with Sunway as we expand. So I think it's been a really good path, but we're only just at the beginning, right? We've announced this partnership, and now what we want to do is to work together to really sort of, build value together.
From what both of you outlined, the synergies are very, very clear. And from my understanding, also from the tech ecosystem, one of the key things that, say, a country like Malaysia lacks is really a lot of deep tech startups. We've got a lot of consumer type startups. We've got a lot of B2B startups, but we don't have a lot of deep tech startups in Malaysia. So I see, Matt, the attraction, obviously, of Deep Labs and bringing those companies and facilitating collaboration. Are you also, Matt and Miles, looking at collaboration with other universities as well within ASEAN, and not just as for example, a launchpad for commercialization in ASEAN?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, a good question. And I think from Sunway's perspective, at least, we are very, open when it comes to building collaborations with other universities. Through Sunway University itself, right, we work with most of the public universities and some of the private universities here. Overseas, we have strong partners, as I said, Cambridge, Oxford, Lancaster University in the UK. In the US, we have Harvard, we have MIT, and we work closely with UC Berkeley and some of our entrepreneurship programs. So, I mean, what's interesting on that stage, a very kind of upstream part of research where a lot of the innovations happening, is that these type of collaborations are extremely important, because even like in Sunway itself, we can't find all the innovations here. In Malaysia itself, we can't find all the solutions that we need to drive net zero, but it's really, exchanging knowledge, sometimes existing knowledge, and then adding on some new technology or some new inventions that can turn into something really great. And what's exciting here is that, especially we're working with Miles, is that they have a very good formula to work with the universities, right? And to take these research outputs and turn them into businesses. And this is something, in my career, I've worked quite a bit with other universities to do technology transfer and commercialization. It's very easy to talk about and to come up with theoretical models on how you form spin-out companies from universities. But it's extremely difficult to execute on that, because at the end of the day, it really comes down to the people driving it, right? And that requires a combination of people with a business acumen, right, who know how to build businesses and make money on the one side, and people who are very good at the research and technology and build new IP and inventions. And I think that is really the exciting part, that we are working on with Deeptech Labs, and then hopefully we will be successful in bringing these innovations to the markets.
Now, I want to echo again.
And so, can I add
Miles,
to that?
go ahead.
Yeah. So I was going to say, I mean, I think from our standpoint, we've built sort of a program that, it's a 10-week accelerator program where we bring our companies through. And so we work, the first few weeks we work on strategy, long-term vision, what's your business need to look like in the long term, coming back to what you need to look like at Series A, metrics and milestones, thinking through your fundraising. Then we go more into sort of the commercialization and sort of more from the strategy more into kind of the execution plan of how do you go to market, product management, sales strategy, and then we talk about intellectual property, which is very important. Then we get ready for sort of the demo day and pitching. And so actually our last demo day, we had over 300 people signed up, over 200 investors came along. So it's a fantastic exposure for these companies for, as they raise their funding, as they look for other partners, but they've built a really strong commercialization plan there. And we do that, as I mentioned before, with sort of experts who, have been there, fantastic networks, who know how to build businesses. And I think what's fantastic about what we do is, we talk to our entrepreneurs, after one of these sessions, and we say, how was that? And they say, wow, that was just incredible. They say, I've had one of my founders say, there were 3 coin drop moments today where I was like, I just hadn't thought of my business that way, or I hadn't thought about going to market this way. And I think that's what's really, really valuable here, is helping these companies go from, as Matt said, kind of an idea and a technology building through to a real business. And what we're finding now, which is really interesting, and I think Sunway Partnership is an example of that, is a lot of folks are kind of saying, look, we really like the model, and we brought 24 companies through. We've got a network of over 400 experts that we bring to bear, and a lot of sort of different folks are saying, how do we do this in other geographies? How do we do this in Malaysia? How do we do it in Southeast Asia? So I think from the Deeptech Labs side, this is something that we don't think this is a Cambridge problem as far as helping companies go from technology to a business. This is a worldwide societal problem, right? And so that's why we're excited to expand into some of these other geographies and other partnerships. So in the long-term vision for Deeptech Labs is to take this model, and also by the way, this network, because this is fantastic that we can go to a new geography, and because we do face-to-face to start off with, face-to-face at the end, but everything in between is virtual, we can bring this network of experts to these different geographies and then build the community from the local folks in addition. So we think it's a really exciting model.
So I just want to add to what Matt and you have just said, Miles, because what you're doing is solving, both of you really, is a really huge problem. Malaysia is one country as an example, but then it's across many countries. It's really the translation of research, academic research, into commercialization. Malaysia is one of those countries where the translation is very, very weak in terms of commercialization. And so this is where I'm quite excited to see how both your companies move forward with this over the next couple of years. But can I ask you then, as you are in the early days of these partnerships, what are some of the key areas you're going to be focusing on from a sustainability perspective? I want to start with you, Miles.
Sure. So, I mean, I think within Deeptech Labs, we've got a number of sustainable businesses. I mentioned this next generation processors that use light instead of electrical energy to get 1/10 of the amount of energy. And you look at data centers and huge amount of energy that they're consuming. We've got companies inspecting wind turbines with drones to be able to ensure that there's sort of high performance and sort of lower the cost to provide renewable energy. We've got a great company, actually, Contilio, that is doing work on the construction side to be able to monitor the as-built environment to determine if it's matching the plans, and around 10% of construction cost is waste. So if you can reduce that waste, you can reduce the environmental impact, reduce the cost. So we're seeing sort of a huge number of really interesting companies. And I think the partnership with Sunway, what's great about that is that, for example, on this construction company, then Sunway is having discussions with the company to see how they could work together. And I think this is just kind of, one example of how we want to continue to work together, is to be able to say, look, here are some great companies. Are these companies that could be useful for Sunway, but also, could these guys, expand into Southeast Asia, and then vice versa as well, as, Sunway and iLabs and some of the companies that are coming through there, are there ways that we can help them come over to Europe as well? So, we think that, this sustainability is just a huge societal problem that we need to work through. And we think that, new technology, new ideas, these new businesses are going to be the way to solve that.
Matt, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, net zero, I mean, it's a very wide, huge field. We're very excited, particularly about climate technologies. And we have sort of distilled that into 4 verticals that we are interested in through our net zero lab. So the first vertical would be to address food security. Again, very big problem for Malaysia, where we import in a range of 60 billion ringgits every year, right? And we sort of made the first moves in that field from Sunway as a venture builder to set up urban farms in cities, at least to combine the real estates or the idle spaces that we have, and connect it to technology to produce pesticide-free food and actually supply that within our ecosystem, be that the FMBs or consumers directly. We see that we want to build out that vertical to drive food security, and we need a lot more technology from upstream, from production, all the way downstream to distribution, really, to get it to people's plates or on people's plates. The second vertical we are looking into is energy efficiency and renewable energy, also very big fields. We've invested quite a bit already into solar, and this is something that we are ramping up now. We've also started to invest into EV charging infrastructure in Malaysia, where we are looking to leverage Sunway's cities across the country. But again, a lot more can be done around that. Third vertical would be circular economy. We see so much waste around us, whether it's food waste or e-waste. And I think there's already some startups doing very interesting things on recycling that and then upcycling some of these waste into more valuable products. And then finally, and I think, apologies for that, but this is really the broadest vertical. It's almost like, if nothing fits into those 3, let's put it under sustainable cities. So that's our 4th vertical. And that's really very broad, from connectivity within cities, but also living. Right? How do we improve quality of life, people living in our cities? And oftentimes we just tend to talk about tech, but tech is not really the solution to improve people's lives, right? There's a lot more that comes to look around that, and that's something we're very excited about. And those 4 verticals are really where we want to spend our time in our net zero labs, to incubate startups and to accelerate them.
Gentlemen, it's been a very informative conversation. But before we leave, any final thoughts you'd like to leave the audience with? I want to start with Miles first.
Certainly. I mean, what I'd like to leave the audience with is that, I think that we have amazing research around the world, great technology. And as we've talked about here, I think that there's a real sort of, gap getting from great technology to building businesses. Only a very small percentage actually really gets commercialized. And here at Deeptech Labs, our whole focus is around taking those great technologies and helping this next generation of entrepreneurs be successful by bringing together the ecosystem and this community of experts to be able to work with them, to help advise them, to help fund them, and to find customers for them. And that's our focus. And so we're really excited because we think we've got a model that's working really well. And we've brought 24 companies through so far. And so we're looking to build this model and expand it, not just in the UK, not just in Cambridge, all across Europe, all across the world, including Asia. So we think it's a really exciting time because we've got so many huge challenges as a society. And we think that one of the ways that we can help address that is by helping to commercialize research. And that's what we're focused on. And that's why we're excited to be partnering with Sunway at Deeptech Labs to be able to help expand that into Southeast Asia.
Matt, your final thoughts?
Yeah, again, this is a very exciting partnership. We're just getting started on this. One of the interesting studies that I've seen is by BCG that showed that about 75% of the technologies that are required to achieve net zero in the next 30 years are either still in the lab or they are at the early adoption stage. And they estimate that more than $100 trillion need to be invested in these kind of technologies to bring them to scale and ultimately to have an impact on the environment. So we are just a very small focus on things. What we hope that this will do is that we will form more partnerships, that we inspire other corporations, like Sunway, to come in and invest in this space, because it's not just one company doing this. We strongly believe in partnerships. And then the other thing I would want to say is that doing these kind of programs with Deeptech Labs requires a lot of effort to bring companies from the UK into Malaysia and ultimately into Southeast Asia as well. What we provide them with is a test bed and a launch pad. We give them access to the 13 business units we have here within the Sunway Group as a little sandbox to run experiments, to validate their business models. We put funding in them as well. We invest into those companies, and we really hope that these companies will ultimately be very successful, and that we can tell these stories and to other people, and hopefully again inspire people to do more in this space. Brian, you're absolutely right. We are lagging behind in Malaysia. We have a lot of talented people, and I hope that we can bring them on board in our net zero lab as well to achieve these goals.
Gentlemen, I wish you all the best in this partnership. It sounds super promising. Thank you very much, Matt and Miles, for coming on the show.
Thank you, Brian.
We've been speaking to Matt van Leeuwen, Chief Innovation Officer of Sunway Group and the Founding Director of Sunway iLabs, and Miles Kirby, the CEO of Deeptech Labs. I'm Brian Fernandez, and you've been watching and listening to BizTech's ESG Conversation Show. Thanks a lot for tuning in.